Delta-diagnosed baby P's broken back is suing Great Ormond Street Hospital for sacking her. We're joined now by former detective and child protection specialist Mark Williams-Thomas. Thanks for joining us on Afternoon Live. Tell us what happens if a baby is at risk. There is a letter in his file that says he's at risk. He presents tearfully. What happens then?
Well, the examining consultant should clearly look at what the evidence is in the file. There's a history here, and it wasn't just a history that happened once. It has been a long-term history. Should have looked at the file, and as a result of looking at the file, should have contacted a social worker, and there should have been a proper assessment taken place. That child should have been kept in the hospital in order for them to do that. That clearly didn't take place. We've got huge failings here, not just by this individual, but by other individuals. But when we talk about this consultant, she failed in her role, and she must be held accountable for that.
Well, she's taking it to a tribunal, and we'll have to wait and see what that tribunal says. Of course, we can't influence that at this stage, but what we can do is talk generally about children who are at risk and what the procedure is. And basically you're saying there should be all sorts of stopgaps in place so that this doesn't happen.
No, absolutely. I mean, when a child presents himself at a hospital, it's important that the hospital has some kind of record, background history about that child. They will hopefully have that on file. It's made slightly more difficult, of course, if a child presents himself at a different hospital. But then what is important is that the hospital then contact where that child has come from. And that child should not be released until such time as they've been able to look at those files and establish whether there's a history. On their file, there was a very clear record to say that this child is subject to child protection investigations in the past, and there are concerns. They should then look to that and said, is there a likelihood that this child has suffered as a result of child abuse? And that's why it's being presented here at hospital. There was clear evidence that suggested that that child was there as a result of child abuse because the child had injuries such as bruising, and that was clearly evident. So the child should have been kept there. And any child that presents themselves at hospital when they've got an injury, the doctors need to ascertain, is this an injury that was by an accident, or was it likely to be deliberate? If it was deliberate, then there obviously is a line of inquiry that they then need to follow.
Parents can be very clever, though, presumably, at trying to cover up the injuries that have been caused to an abused child. Not least, we know in baby Peter's case, chocolate being smeared over his face.
Absolutely, and it's important that the professionals stand back from that and try and analyse and look at the information that they have, past history, as well as the injury that's being presented. It's very easy for a case of chocolate being put over someone. You just simply wipe the chocolate off, and then you've got the injury that's there. In this case, in baby P's case, had an x-ray been done, it may well, and it certainly would have revealed some of those injuries. We mustn't forget that when baby P died, he had 50 separate injuries on him, and that would have been, those injuries were occurring over a period of many months. The pathologist report clearly says that. So the child, when was presented at hospital, had clear injuries on them, and we must be saying to professionals that are in this role, it is a difficult role. You know, anybody working in child protection is in a very difficult role, but that is why they are there. They're paid very well for those roles, and they're also respected highly. We need to give the confidence to professionals out there who do a brilliant role, and when somebody does something and it's wrong, they have to be held accountable for that.
Do doctors have a fail-safe in place where they can call on other professionals like social workers and the police as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the child care professionals now work very closely together. The police work very closely with social services work closely with police, education, housing. There's a very clear processes in place. So it isn't an individual making a decision, it's a collective decision. If there's any doubt, you talk to another professional and you share those concerns. That didn't happen in this case because the child presented themselves. There was no discussion with other social workers, with other people around. Had that had taken place, social workers were very clearly could have got hold of the file and said, actually, look, there's a big history here. So processes were in place. They didn't happen on that occasion, and as a result of that, sadly, baby P died.
Will this child ever be allowed to rest in peace?
Well, I think we will in due course. It's important that we talk about these things. You know, they are in their minority. Children die every single day, every week. We have 1 or 2 children dying at the hands of their parents. It's important we talk about these cases so that we look at the problems that were there so that they don't happen again. Children will continue to die, but we have to highlight, I think in due course, obviously baby P will live in our memories, and hopefully he will be able to rest.
Okay, Mark Williams-Thomas, always a pleasure. Thank you very much.